Hello and welcome back to Compensation Uncovered, the series that lifts the lid on the world of personal injury claims. We're here to arm all Australians with everything you need to know to make sure you get all the compensation you're fairly entitled to under the law. Compensation Uncovered is brought to you by our team here at Law Partners, and we are Australia's largest specialist personal injury firm. I'm your host, Piers Toomey, and once again, it's a pleasure to be back here with you. And today I'm once again joined by two of our senior experts at Law Partners, Chantel Curry and Katie Norman. How are you guys doing today?
Good, thanks.
Well, thanks, Piers.
Thanks for joining us again. We do appreciate your time. This next question, we'd love to have a look at your experience with some real life client stories. We've talked a lot about sort of some of the technical details, some of the payout ranges. Now, our audience would probably really love to have this brought to life with a few sort of real life examples of client stories. So Chantel, if I can start with you, are there any kind of memorable or important cases that you've worked on that really come to mind?
Yes, of course. One really comes to mind, and it's not so much the type of claim or it being unusual. It was more so towards the end and actually throughout the whole process, this amount of humility that came from this particular client despite, everything that had happened to him as a result of the car accident. So the impact it had had on his life was so significant, yet he just stayed so composed, so humble throughout the whole thing, and I'll explain why. So it was a 44-year-old bus driver driving a bus during peak hour, and a car pulled out in front of him and didn't have enough time to stop. Heavy vehicle, it takes a lot longer for them to slow down. So he kind of just had to crash into this car in order to make sure the passengers in the bus were also okay. So he bore the brunt of the injury, came out with an injured neck and the whole of his right side, basically right shoulder, right hip as well. And ultimately he required neck surgery, and we pursued some compensation for him and looked at how the injury had impacted his life, both from a physical and psychological perspective. And the claim went on for a couple of years, and he was that injured that he couldn't come to see me in the office. So all our conferences were done on video, and I would kind of see the impact of the accident on his life through the video. And, often he'd be, basically in his bed talking to me, and the bedroom was just extremely messy. So, it's not uncommon for, injuries to impact people in those ways. They suddenly lose their ability to, keep their houses. Exactly. Yeah. So he's coming on, unshaven, mess everywhere. So, I obviously feel for him. But as we got to the very end and he's done all his treatment, he's done all his surgery, and, we've talked about potential settlement, I would have to go back to him and relay each offer at the end. So we would make an offer, the insurer would counter-offer as we kind of got to the pointy end of finishing the claim. And after each offer, he'd say, no, that's enough. I don't need any more. And this poor guy had, 2 young kids and
a lot of responsibility.
Of course. And life was turning upside down for him. But at every single offer, he'd say, no, I don't deserve any more. And it gave me just more grunt to kind of fight for him and say, no. So this is the first time, I think the first and only time it's ever happened to me where someone would tell me, that's enough. I don't deserve more. So obviously I fought harder and harder, and we ended up with a verdict of 1.2 million. So he was over the moon, but very, very deserving. So that's one that really resonated with me.
Absolutely. And I imagine that was really helpful for him in terms of getting his life back on track, being able to look after his family. I assume he couldn't work again in the near future.
Yeah. So hopefully now he's received some money, and, he's able to do a bit more treatment and got some, got into some kind of work just to kind of keep his brain ticking at least.
And a great example of the sort of personal relationship that we really do develop, with our clients here at Law Partners, as far as getting to know them and uncovering, more about their lives so we can dig a little deeper and get the maximum compensation for them. Katie, have you had similar experiences like that, or what's a couple of stories that come to mind for you?
I have, similar to you, Chantel. I think one thing we see in our clients all the time is their humility and their stoicism. And I had a client last year come to me. He had an accident some 3 years before. He'd have to have right ankle surgery, but he'd gone back to work, and he was a childhood nurse. Yeah. And so day on day, he had seen the suffering that children go through, and he had sort of thought to himself, well, I'm back at work. I'm doing okay. yeah, I can't do certain things, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it was actually the TAC 3 years later that convinced him to go and get some legal advice.
Oh, wow.
And he came to us, and the first thing he said to me is, I'm not sure why I'm here. I don't deserve it. I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Look at the children that I look after on a daily basis.
Mm.
And his other concern was, I don't want to do this because the young lady that hit me, it was an accident. She was only 18. She was new to the road. I don't want her to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so with him, it was really working with him and getting to understand, firstly, that the person that hit him was not going to get in trouble. The TAC will pay any compensation.
Yeah.
And I had to spend a lot of time with him to draw out the consequences, because when you asked him, he said, I'm fine. But then you realised he couldn't volunteer anymore. He couldn't ride his bike.
Yeah.
He had to sit in the stand, vary between the two every sort of half an hour. And so despite him going back to work on a full-time basis, we were able to settle his claim in around 4 months, and he received $450,000.
Wow.
And similar to your client, at every offer made beforehand, he was saying, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. That's enough.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of working with him to get him to understand that he really did deserve his compensation. He'd been through a lot.
Yeah.
It's a
I
really
think
common
for
theme.
us, absolutely. It's hearing that, I mean, just inspires me so much more to kind of, help those that are in need, because you think, oh, these people are, pursuing their lives and, they've got all this that's happened to them, yet they can continue to work. And you just think, oh my gosh, well, I don't have those problems. I need to fight harder for this person. And that's the rewarding part, I suppose, that we always come back to.
Yeah, being able to help people. And that additional amount, Katie, that you were able to help this particular gentleman, was that in addition to some sort of payments that he had been receiving up until that point? This was sort of an extra help for him in his life?
It was. So his medical and like expenses continued to be funded, and he did receive loss of earnings while he was off work, but it's his nature. He got back to work far earlier than what I've ever seen anyone with those injuries, and he's been able to continue to work.
I guess people have a sense of duty. They want to be able to continue to do what they can to support their family and contribute, positively to society. But sometimes, you're injured, you're in a bad way. It's not always something that you can do with ease.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And you mentioned, Katie, another story that came to mind for you when we were talking earlier. Could you share with our audience a little bit about that?
I think it's a story that I hear quite often. I often have clients come to me, and they've come to me because they've been told by other law firms, we can't help you, the matter's too hard. And often when you spend time with those clients and you take them through the circumstances, you get to know them. And again, it's all about what they're not saying.
Right.
You can find your way out with a bit of persistence. And so I had a young lady come to me, I think it was late last year, and she had been out riding her bike, and an unidentified driver had actually hit her. And
A push bike or a motorbike?
She was riding a push bike.
Yeah.
And the driver had hit her, and she sustained a really nasty leg injury. She'd been to another firm who said, we can't identify the vehicle. It's all a bit too hard. And it was only that she happened to sort of be online, and she saw the Law Partners website and thought, I'll give someone else a call. And we're still in the process of resolving her claim, but she certainly has a claim. It just requires a little bit of a different approach and a little bit more work.
I love that. That's fantastic. What do you think it was about our approach that differed from the firm that wasn't interested or didn't think there was a case? You saw something there that would make it viable?
I think it's a more difficult case, absolutely, but the legislation's there and you're able to do it. You've just got to take some different steps and take some additional work to do.
It's a bit of tenacity and being relentless, giving it a real rolling up your sleeves and giving it a good old shot.
Yeah. When I think of our lawyers, not only are they technically good, but they've got the I suppose the effort factor behind them to push to gain these maximum outcomes for our clients. So, this story we hear far too often, that somebody's been turned away by another firm, and they come to us and their results are astounding.
So here at Law Partners, we really do pride ourselves on being able to help people get as much compensation as possible, sort of to get their lives back on track. But before they speak to us, that they're not always aware of what is on offer or available to them. So, Katie, just starting with you, what would you say you would love more people to know about when it comes in the Victorian community, when it comes to sort of making a TAC claim?
I think the first thing, and I did touch on it in an earlier episode, is that you can still make the claim whether you're at fault or whether you're not at fault for the accident. I think that's really important. And I think it's really important for people to know that the earlier that you make the claim, the more likely you are to get access to early treatment, which will usually give you a better outcome.
Oh, is that right? So you don't delay, in other words, sort of get things moving as soon as possible.
Absolutely, don't delay.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the time, what people don't know is that if the insurer declines an aspect of your claim, it's not the end of the world. You can seek legal advice. So say, for example, they've declined physiotherapy because they don't think it's going to help with your recovery. But very often it doesn't actually need to help with your recovery. It helps with you maintain your everyday life. So if it helps you get up in the morning and go to work, and that's what you need to maintain that, then your lawyers can fight that for you. And it doesn't cost you anything. The insurers will pay your legal fees.
Right. So don't necessarily take the first no as a given.
Exactly right.
Thanks so much for joining us here at Compensation Uncovered, brought to you by our team here at Law Partners. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow us on all your favourite social media platforms, as we have many more client stories and legal tips and insights to share with you. Until then, goodbye for now.